Now, there are features that I'm not going to cover. As you can see here, there are a whole bunch of features here in the Enterprise SKU which are exclusive to Enterprise, but I try and pick out like what are the best and the most compelling ones and share those with business owners, because I know that, look, you're not geeks and you're not necessarily going to read the whole help guide and the help article and find every single feature. I want to share just some of the highlights, and then if you're interested in a deeper conversation, it'll be best to connect with our team and have a chat about that. But let's really get into the details of like what are the key features of the Enterprise plan. The first one I want to talk about is Google Meet Enterprise, and this is the Enterprise version of Google Meet, which gives you a bunch more features not available on the business or on the basic edition. Now, if you've been clever and switched on the free Google Meet promotion, you may already have access to some of these features. If you're a customer of ours, we already switched on this feature for our concierge customers. Now, what the Enterprise edition of Google Meet lets you do is a number of things that you can't do in the more basic versions that make it really, really easy to do all of your meetings online. Now, pre-COVID and pre the world going topsy-turvy with travel and everything else, we saw businesses and business owners flying all around the country for meetings, and I always thought that was absolutely crazy. We've run our business for years, over 6 years now, completely remote, meaning each one of our employees actually works completely from home, and they can work from the road, they can work while traveling, they can work from a co-working space. They basically get to work wherever they want to work. And so what that means is that when we do meetings, we have to do them online. So inside itGenius, it's basically been a part of our culture to just do all of our meetings online using Google Meet. And that means we're doing a lot of Google meetings, hundreds and hundreds of hours every single month with our team, although probably thousands of hours by now. Now, for many businesses, the whole COVID apocalypse that changed the way that we've had to work has meant that meetings are happening online for the first time. And so there are a few features that Google's baked into Google Meet which makes doing a lot of meetings and a high volume of meetings very, very useful. So let's run through a couple of those that are exclusive to Enterprise. So the first one is we've got the basics of Meet, which have been rapidly upgraded over the past 3 months. They've added a tile view. They are soon going to add things like breakout rooms. Google have got their act together and really improved the Google Meet experience. So if you're someone who's still using Zoom, and perhaps you're even using Zoom just because people are more familiar with it outside your business, I implore you to try out Google Meet and use it because it works great in the browser and it's got a bunch of really nifty, easy to use features which make meetings really simple for your internal team. Now, one of the exclusive features to Enterprise Edition is to be able to record meetings, but not just record those meetings, but have them automatically sit inside your Google Drive. And this seems like a pretty small feature, right? It's not that significant until you're running a business with 10 or more staff and everyone's using Zoom. And I can tell you this because we were previously using Zoom for some of our meetings. And what we found was when we wanted to record meetings, you have to record them to your local computer, which may eventually fill up the hard drive space on that machine. And every time you finish a meeting, you've got to wait for it to render, and it slows down the machine when that happens. And if you want to make use of Zoom's cloud recording feature, well, it stores it all in your Zoom account, and you've got to then go and download them. And if you want to maybe put them in a Google Drive or share them with your team or keep them for archiving, you're constantly doing this downloading from Zoom and then uploading back into Google Drive. And so the archiving is a little bit of friction. And what I know is that not just for business owners, but for end users as well, the moment that you have friction and you reduce convenience, it means that it's just difficult to get your work done. And people are less likely to actually do an action. And that's the kind of friction. It's a bit like using a Microsoft Word document and having to attach it to an email before you actually send it to someone. That kind of friction just slows down the whole of your business. And so you would know if you've used a Google document how easy it is to collaborate. Well, using a meeting, doing a meeting, and having a recording happen automatically, and having that recording automatically go into your Google Drive, and then just being able to share that drive file automatically. It automatically shares it to everyone that was on the meeting, and if you want to put it in a shared drive and then share it with your team, that works absolutely brilliantly. So that's really the best feature of recording, is not just the ability to record, it's actually the ability to have it automatically go inside your Google Drive. And you might be thinking, hey Pete, you know what, that's not super exciting for me. Yes, sure. If you're a sole operator, super not exciting to you at all. But once you've got a large team and you've got to worry about licenses and storage and, oh, did we record that meeting or did we lose that meeting? Or maybe you're doing telehealth because you're in the medical field and you don't want any of your staff to accidentally leave one of the recordings on their local machine or accidentally forget to upload that recording to the client file. Once things are stored in Drive, they are secured under your Google account, and it means that they're protected by Google Vault. And then all of your team are actually making sure that any recordings they make of their meetings are stored inside the safe and secure Google ecosystem. And we're going to talk a little bit more about how secure that is upcoming. Okay, so next up, you can actually use a live streaming feature inside of Google as well. So this is useful if, for schools, teachers, also useful for larger organizations, or maybe you're an organization that's maybe, a franchisor type network, and you've got a number of franchisees, and you want to have way more people on a meeting because it's more of a broadcasty meeting rather than an actual meeting. And that's where live streaming built in can make this happen. And what I really love about that is there's no like extra licensing fee required. If you're using Zoom, you've got to pay for a webinar license, and if you've got a number of different staff that need to use it, that starts to run into trouble as well. And so having the live stream built right into Google Meet is nice and easy. Now, personally, I do not use this one myself, but we have a number of clients who use this to actually stream and get messages out to large audiences. And effectively, this is built on the YouTube live streaming infrastructure in the background. And so it's extremely robust, can scale to literally hundreds of thousands of people, if you've got that many. And so if you're a global business that needs to get a message out, or you're running an online event of some sort, then using this kind of streaming feature is pretty cool. And you don't have to mess around with all of the streaming software and OBS and, getting stuff set up on your computer and plugging in a DSLR, all of those extra things that you would normally need to do for a streaming setup, you just don't have to worry about. So it makes it nice and simple for you. So quick summary of the advanced Meet functionality inside Enterprise. This is really one of the easiest reasons to upgrade to Enterprise, or to consider upgrading to Enterprise. And one of the other things is you would have noticed dial-in numbers for your Google Meetings. If you're based in Australia, you would know that the dial-in numbers are actually US numbers. You can only dial in for free if you're in the US. If you want access to Australian dial-in numbers, you actually have to upgrade to the Enterprise plan. But you get Australian dial-in numbers, meaning that you or your customers or your staff can use their phone to dial into a meeting. Many more meetings happening right now, and so being able to dial in is definitely really useful. But you can see here that there's plenty of features specific to Google Meet inside the Enterprise plan. Also, noise cancellation. That's another important one as well. All right, cool. So we're going to move on to our next one. So let's talk now about one of the other keystone features of Enterprise, which is data loss prevention. And this is really useful for the kinds of businesses that are dealing with sensitive data and want to make sure that that data does not go walkabout from your business. Now, if you're dealing with personal information of clients, if you're dealing with something like maybe Medicare numbers, if you're dealing with medical records, any of those important pieces of information, maybe credit card numbers, or ABNs of customers, or social security numbers, those are extremely important to keep protected. And in any country where you're dealing with that kind of medical information as a business, there will be severe and harsh penalties for allowing that data to be breached, because it's literally people's personal information. And with the big shift towards being a more privacy conscious globe right now, there are very harsh penalties for actually leaking that information. And so this feature, data loss prevention, is specifically designed to ensure that if you are handling personal information, secure personal information for any one of your customers, or your staff are handling that information, then they are actually making sure that that is kept within the Google ecosystem and it is not able to get out of the Google ecosystem. So how do we do that with DLP? Well, there's some pretty damn awesome magic that happens with Google to actually help make sure that data is not lost. So I'm going to get a tiny bit technical here. I hope it doesn't get too technical for you. But the first thing we're going to do is we're going to define different types of data. And so we're going to define what is a Medicare number, or what does a credit card number look like, or what does a patient detail look like. And we're going to define that as a data set. Now, there's a number of those data definitions that are already defined. I believe Medicare in Australia already is. Credit card numbers are definitely already defined. And what Google is going to do is it's going to say, okay, we can create a policy around that piece of data. And you may say, well, for credit cards, we don't ever want them to go out on an email. Or you may say, I don't ever want a credit card to be stored in plain text. And for things like complying with PCI DSS compliance on the storing and handling of credit cards, they're the kind of things that are just a no-no. You cannot store a customer's credit card in plain text. You just cannot allow that at all. And what data loss prevention will do is it will take those policies and it will effectively scan each one of your documents, each one of your emails, and basically every file that exists within the Google ecosystem, and it will make sure that that data is protected. So if it detects a credit card number, a Medicare number, or anything else that you have defined in those pieces of data, it can take certain actions. Some of those actions may be to quarantine, some of those actions may be to flag it to administrators, but either way, if you're the business owner or you're the IT consultant or the IT leader inside the business, you can effectively enforce that none of that data is stored inappropriately anywhere in the business. And you can see from time to time how this kind of thing might just naturally happen via human error. Someone goes to send an email and they accidentally cut and paste the wrong information into an email. They go to send the email and your quarantine with data loss prevention is going to stop it. Or maybe someone scans a document and that document is scanned into a PDF and there is plain text information in there which has sensitive information. Well, DLP can even look into PDF files. It uses optical character recognition and it's going to quarantine those files if you've chosen to quarantine as well. So much amazing stuff that you can do with that feature. That's an absolute keystone feature of Enterprise. And what that allows you to do is really have a much more secure knowledge that when you're sharing and handling and dealing with that personal information for your customers, that it is actually secured, and importantly, that the business stays compliant. And we know that in a business that is growing, in an organization that is dealing with any kind of sensitive data, a breach can bring that business to its knees. Look at Equifax. Look at other large organizations who've been what was the other one in the United States? I've lost my memory now, but large organizations who've had large data breaches. There was even all of those files from the Cayman Islands. Cyber hackers are interested in getting access to online tools and online services, not just to get access to the data, but with how they can use that data. And they use that data to steal people's identities, drain people's bank accounts, phishing scams, all kinds of stuff, and the cycle just repeats and repeats. And so it's really not good enough just to switch on two-factor authentication and hope for the best these days. You actually need to take a little bit more hands-on approach to making sure that you've got data protected.